Sofia Chen's hands were raw from the cold as she locked up the small community kitchen at 11:47 p.m. The November wind cut through her threadbare coat like a blade, and her feet ached from the double shift she'd just pulled. First the breakfast rush at Sal's diner, then 6 hours at the community center serving dinner to people who had even less than she did. She should go home. Her studio apartment in Chinatown was a 30-minute subway ride away, and she had to be back at Sal's by 5 a.m. But as she turned toward the subway station, she saw him. The boy. He was huddled in the same doorway he'd occupied for the past 2 months, a cardboard box his only shelter against the bitter Chicago wind. He couldn't have been more than 6 years old, with dark curls that had grown wild and matted, and clothes that were threadbare and filthy. His small body was curled into a tight ball, shivering. Sophia's heart clenched the way it did every time she saw him. She'd tried everything, calling child services 5 times, talking to the police twice, even attempting to coax him into coming inside the community center. But the boy never spoke, never made a sound. He'd just look at her with those enormous dark eyes, terrified and watchful, and shake his head violently if she got too close. Child services had come twice, but he'd run before they could reach him, disappeared into the maze of alleys like smoke. The police said their hands were tied. They couldn't force a child into care if they couldn't catch him, and he wasn't committing crimes. Never mind that a 6-year-old sleeping in a doorway in November was its own kind of crime. So Sofia did what she could. She brought him food. Every single day for 2 months, she'd brought him whatever she could scrape together. Leftover sandwiches from the diner, hot soup from the community kitchen, blankets she'd bought from the thrift store with money she couldn't afford to spend, a small first aid kit when she'd noticed the cuts on his hands. She'd even given him a name, privately, in her own head. She called him Angelo, Little Angel, because despite the dirt and fear, there was something almost ethereal about him. Those huge dark eyes, the delicate features, the way he moved with an odd grace even when he was starving and exhausted. Tonight, she had a container of chicken noodle soup and a grilled cheese sandwich, still warm from dinner service. "Hey, Angelo," she said softly, using the name even though he'd never responded to it. She crouched down a few feet away, careful not to invade his space. "I brought your favorite tonight. Chicken soup. Still hot." The boy's eyes opened slowly. Even after 2 months, they still held that same haunted quality. Like he'd seen things no child should ever see. He didn't reach for the food immediately. He never did. He'd watch her set it down, watch her step back, and only then would he slowly, carefully, take it. Like he was afraid it might be a trick. Like he was afraid she might hurt him. "It's okay, sweetheart," Sofia murmured, her voice gentle. "Same as always. I'm just going to put this right here, and then I'm going to sit over there. You take your time." She placed the container and sandwich on the cleanest part of the cardboard, added a bottle of water and a small package of cookies she'd bought from the corner store. Then she moved to sit on the steps of the adjacent building, wrapping her own thin coat tighter against the cold. The boy waited a full 2 minutes before reaching for the food. His small hands were dirty, his fingernails broken and ragged. When he opened the container, the steam rose into the cold air, and Sofia saw him close his eyes briefly, breathing in the warmth. He ate slowly, methodically, like someone had once taught him table manners. That detail always broke her heart a little more. This wasn't a child who'd been born into homelessness. This was a child who'd had a life once, who'd sat at a table with family, who'd been loved and cared for. Something had happened to him. Something terrible. And Sofia wished with everything in her that she could fix it. "I brought you some new socks, too," she said quietly, pulling a package from her bag and setting it near his makeshift shelter. "The weather's getting colder, and there's a winter coat at the thrift store. It's your size, I think. I'm going to try to get it for you next week when I get paid." The boy looked at her, and for just a moment, the fear in his eyes seemed to lessen. Just a fraction. Just enough to make Sofia's chest ache with hope. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. You know, Sophia continued, her voice soft in the cold night air. I keep thinking about your family. Somewhere out there, someone must be looking for you. Someone must miss you so much. And I wish you could tell me your real name. I wish you could tell me where you come from, so I could help you get home. The boy's hand stilled on the spoon. For a moment, Sophia thought she saw tears in his eyes. Then he blinked, and they were gone, replaced by that same careful blankness. I call you Angelo, Sophia said, because you look like a little angel, even when you're covered in dirt. But I bet you have a beautiful real name. I bet someone gave you that name with so much love. The boy set down the soup container, half finished. He looked at Sophia for a long moment, and she could see him struggling with something. His mouth opened slightly, like he wanted to speak. Like he was trying to remember how. But then a car backfired 3 blocks away, and the boy flinched so violently he knocked over the water bottle. His eyes went wide with terror, his whole body tensing to run. It's okay, Sophia said quickly, keeping her voice calm despite her racing heart. It's okay, Angelo. It was just a car. You're safe. You're safe. The boy was trembling now, his small frame shaking with more than just cold. Sophia wanted desperately to go to him, to hold him, to promise him that nothing would hurt him. But she'd learned over 2 months that approaching him when he was scared only made things worse. So she stayed where she was, speaking in soft, soothing tones until the trembling slowly subsided. Until his breathing evened out. Until he carefully picked up the water bottle and took a small sip. That's it, Sophia murmured. You're okay. You're safe. I'm right here, and I'm not going to let anything hurt you. It was a promise she had no power to keep, and they both probably knew it. But it seemed to help anyway. Sophia stayed until he finished eating, until he'd curled back up in his cardboard shelter with the new blanket she'd brought wrapped around his small shoulders and the package of socks clutched against his chest like treasure. Only then did she stand, her knees protesting from the cold concrete. I'll see you tomorrow, Angelo. Sleep safe tonight, okay? I'll be back in the morning with breakfast before I go to work. He watched her walk away. He always did. She could feel his eyes on her back until she turned the corner toward the subway station. What Sophia didn't see was the black SUV parked in the shadows across the street, or the man inside whose knuckles had gone white gripping the steering wheel as he watched his son, his baby boy, eat soup from a styrofoam container in a doorway like a stray animal. What Sophia didn't see was the same man lowering his head to the steering wheel, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs as he watched the only person his traumatized son would trust walk away into the night. What Sophia didn't see was how close she'd been to the most dangerous man in Chicago for the past 2 months, or how her small acts of kindness were the only thing keeping that man's rage from burning the entire city to the ground. Alessio Salvatore had been many things in his 36 years. He'd been a son who'd watched his father build an empire from blood and fear. He'd been a soldier who'd learned to kill before he learned to drive. He'd been a husband for 3 beautiful years before cancer stole his wife and left him alone with a 2-year-old son he didn't know how to raise. He'd been a widower, a boss, a killer. A businessman who owned half of Chicago through a complex web of legitimate and illegitimate enterprises. But the identity that mattered most, the only one that truly defined him, was father. And 68 days ago, someone had stolen his son. Luca had been taken from his elite private school during recess. The security detail Alessio had paid a fortune for had been drugged. The cameras had been disabled. His 6-year-old son had vanished like he'd never existed, leaving behind only a ransom note that demanded Alessio surrender 3 territories and $5 million in cash. Alessio had paid. Of course he'd paid. He would have given them everything. Every territory, every dollar, every drop of blood in his body, to get Luca back. But when he'd delivered the ransom, the exchange point had been empty. No Luca. No kidnappers. Just a warehouse rigged with enough explosives to level a city block, and a note that said, "The boy is dead. This is what happens to kings who forget they're mortal." The Kozlov family. Russian Bratva who'd been trying to muscle into Chicago for years. They'd taken his son not for ransom, but for revenge, for humiliation, to break him. And they'd succeeded. Alessio had torn through the Kozlov organization like a hurricane. He'd killed Dmitry Kozlov with his bare hands, had made the man's sons watch before killing them too. He'd burned their businesses, scattered their soldiers, erased them from existence. But it had all been for nothing, because Luca was dead. Except he wasn't. 3 months after the kidnapping, one of Alessio's informants had spotted a small boy in Chicago's Chinatown district who matched Luca's description. Dark curls, dark eyes, approximately 6 years old, living on the streets. Alessio had been in Chinatown within an hour. And there, huddled in a doorway, was his son. Alive. Thin and filthy and clearly traumatized, but alive. Alessio had tried to approach immediately, of course, had walked right up to that doorway with tears streaming down his face, saying Luca's name, reaching for his boy. Luca had run, had looked at Alessio with pure terror, and run like Alessio was a monster coming to hurt him. Marco, Alessio's head of security and closest friend, had caught Luca 3 blocks away. But when they'd tried to put him in the car, when they'd tried to bring him home, Luca had fought like a wild animal, screaming without sound, biting, clawing, so panicked he'd made himself vomit. The child psychologist Alessio had called in had been clear. Forcing Luca would cause more trauma. Whatever had been done to him in captivity had broken something fundamental. He didn't remember his old life, didn't recognize his father, didn't trust anyone. The psychologist had recommended a gradual approach. Let Luca stay where he felt safe. Monitor him. Slowly rebuild trust. It could take weeks or months, but forcing him would only make things worse. So Alessio had done the hardest thing he'd ever done. He'd backed off. He'd stationed guards in the area to keep Luca safe from a distance. And he'd watched his son live like an animal on the streets, while Alessio slept in that SUV across the street, unable to go more than a block away. That had been 2 months ago. 2 months of watching Luca shiver in doorways. 2 months of watching him scavenge for food before the woman started feeding him. 2 months of dying inside every single night. The woman, Sofia Chen, his background check had revealed. 27 years old, orphaned at 19, worked 2 jobs that barely kept her above the poverty line. No criminal record, no connections to any organization, no reason to care about a homeless child except basic human decency. For 2 months, Alessio had watched her feed his son, had watched her bring blankets and medicine and speak to Luca with such gentle kindness that it made Alessio's chest ache, had watched his son slowly, incrementally, begin to trust her. She called him Angelo, little angel. And even though Luca never responded, never spoke, Alessio could see that the boy listened for her voice, waited for her, trusted her in a way he trusted no one else. Alessio should be grateful. This woman was keeping his son alive, keeping him fed, clearly trying her best to help him. She'd called child services multiple times, had tried to get police involved. She'd done everything a good person would do. But Alessio wasn't a good person. And every night he watched Sofia Chen walk away from his son, something dark and possessive twisted in his chest. She'd become part of Luca's survival, which meant she'd become part of Alessio's world whether she knew it or not. "Boss," Marco said quietly from the driver's seat. They'd been watching tonight's feeding ritual in silence for the past 20 minutes. "We need to make a decision. Winter's coming hard. We can't leave him out here much longer." "I know," Alessio said, his voice rough. "The psychologist said building trust is the priority, and the only person he trusts is her." Marco paused. "Maybe it's time we bring her into this. Tell her who you are. Ask for her help." Alessio had considered it, had planned it, had rehearsed what he'd say 1,000 times. But there was a problem. "She'll run," Alessio said quietly. "The moment she knows who I am, what I am, she'll take that information to the police. Or she'll run and never come back. And then, Luca loses the only person he trusts. So what do we do?" Alessio watched Sofia Chen stand up from the steps, watched her say something soft to Luca before walking away. Watched his son's eyes follow her with something that looked almost like hope. "We bring her in carefully," Alessio said. "We make sure she understands what's at stake before she knows who I am. We make sure she can't run." "Boss, I'm not hurting her," Alessio said sharply. "But I'm not losing my son again either. We do this carefully. We make her see that helping us is the right choice." Marco was quiet for a moment. "And if she doesn't see it that way?" Alessio's jaw tightened. "Then we make sure she doesn't have a choice." It was a ruthless plan. A plan that involved manipulating a kind woman who'd done nothing wrong except care about a child who needed help. But Alessio had been many things in his life, and one of them was pragmatic. He would do whatever it took to get his son back. Whatever it took to keep Lucas safe. Even if it meant dragging an innocent woman into his dangerous world. Even if it meant making her hate him. His son's life was worth more than anyone's comfort. Worth more than anyone's freedom. Worth more than his own soul, which he'd sold years ago anyway. "Tomorrow," Alessio said. "We approach her tomorrow. Somewhere public. Somewhere she'll feel safe enough to listen. And then? And then we see if Sofia Chen is as good a person as she appears to be." Alessio's eyes hardened. "Because if she is, she'll help us? And if she's not?" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Marco nodded slowly. "I'll set it up." They sat in silence as Sofia disappeared around the corner toward the subway station. Across the street, Luca had curled back into his cardboard shelter, the blanket she'd brought wrapped around his small frame. Alessio's hand was on the door handle before he could stop himself. Every instinct screamed at him to go to his son, to scoop him up and carry him home and never let him out of his sight again. But he'd tried that, and Luca had looked at him like he was a monster. So Alessio forced himself to stay in the SUV, forced himself to watch his 6-year-old son sleep in a doorway, forced himself to wait. Just a little longer. Just until tomorrow, when he'd finally meet the woman who'd been caring for his son. The woman who had no idea that her small acts of kindness had caught the attention of the most dangerous man in Chicago. The woman whose life was about to change in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. Tomorrow, Sofia Chen would learn that there were consequences to being kind in a cruel world. And Alessio would make sure those consequences bound her to him and Luca so tightly she could never leave. Because he'd already lost his son once. He wasn't losing him again. And he wasn't losing the only person Luca trusted. Not for anything. Not for anyone. Not even if it made him the monster his son already believed he was. Sofia's alarm went off at 4:30 a.m., and she woke with the familiar ache of exhaustion in her bones. Another day, another double shift, another night of bringing food to a child she couldn't save. She went through her morning routine on autopilot. Shower in the tiny bathroom where the hot water lasted exactly 4 minutes. Instant coffee, because she couldn't afford the real thing. the same black pants and white shirt she wore to the diner every day. Her phone buzzed with a text from her coworker Jenny. "Can you cover my lunch shift? My kid's sick." Sofia should say no. She was already working 16-hour days. But Jenny was a single mom like Sofia wished she could be for Angelo, and Jenny needed the money just as desperately. She texted back, "Sure, feel better?" By 5:15, Sofia was at Sal's diner, tying on her apron and preparing for the early morning rush. Truckers, night shift workers coming off duty, a few regulars who liked their coffee before dawn. "You look like hell," Sal said bluntly when she came into the kitchen. He was 65, gruff, and had owned this diner for 40 years. "You working yourself to death, girl." "I'm fine," Sofia said automatically. "You're not fine. You're working 2 jobs and running yourself ragged." Sal studied her with sharp eyes. "What's going on? You in trouble? You owe somebody money?" "No, nothing like that. I just—" Sofia hesitated. She hadn't told anyone about Angelo, hadn't wanted to explain why she was spending money she didn't have on a child who wasn't hers. "I'm helping someone, a kid who needs it." Sal's expression softened slightly. "That boy in Chinatown? The homeless one?" Sofia's head snapped up. "How did you—" "I see you buying extra food every night. I'm old, not stupid." Sal pulled a package from under the counter. "Here, take this. Sandwiches, some fruit, cookies. For the kid." Tears burned Sofia's eyes. "Sal, I can't—" "You can, and you will. That boy needs help, and you're helping him. So I'm helping you." He pushed the package into her hands. "Now get to work before I change my mind and make you pay for it." Sofia worked her shift with a lighter heart than she'd had in weeks. There were still good people in the world. People like Sal, who noticed and cared and helped. Maybe that meant there was hope for Angelo too. Maybe somewhere, somehow, things would work out. She was refilling coffee for a table of construction workers when the bell over the door chimed. Sofia glanced up automatically, her practiced smile already in place. The smile froze. 3 men had entered the diner, all wearing expensive suits that looked completely out of place in Sal's worn booths and faded linoleum. All carrying themselves with a dangerous confidence that made Sofia's survival instincts prickle. The one in the middle was the most striking. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair styled perfectly, and a face that belonged on magazine covers. He was handsome in a way that felt almost threatening. Too perfect, too controlled, too aware of his own power. His dark eyes scanned the diner and landed on Sofia, and didn't look away. Sofia's hand trembled slightly as she finished pouring coffee. There was something predatory in the way he looked at her. Like he knew something she didn't. Like he'd been looking for her specifically. The 3 men slid into a corner booth, and Sofia watched them with growing unease. They didn't look at menus, didn't chat among themselves. Just sat there, waiting. Waiting for what? "Sofia," Sal called from the kitchen. "Those suits in the corner are yours. Go take their order." Sofia's stomach knotted, but she grabbed her order pad and approached the table. Up close, the 3 men were even more intimidating. The 2 flanking the handsome one had the build and bearing of security, or enforcers, and the one in the middle. He looked at her like he could see straight through to her soul. "Good morning," Sofia said, keeping her voice professional despite her nerves. "What can I get you, gentlemen?" "Coffee," the handsome one said. His voice was deep, smooth, carefully controlled. "And a moment of your time, Miss Chen." Sofia's blood went cold. He knew her name. He knew her name. "I'm sorry," she said carefully. "Do I know you?" "No, but I know you." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Please, sit. We need to talk about the boy you've been feeding." Every instinct screamed at Sofia to run, but she was trapped between the booth and two very large men who looked like they could stop her before she took 3 steps. "I don't know what you're talking about," she lied. "The boy in the doorway on Wentworth Street. Dark curls, dark eyes, approximately 6 years old. You call him Angelo." The man's eyes never left hers. "You've been feeding him every day for 2 months. You've called child services 5 times trying to get him help. You've spent approximately $300 of your own money on food and supplies for him." "Oh God. Oh God, they've been watching. For how long? Why? Who are you?" Sofia whispered. The man leaned forward slightly, and Sofia caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something dangerous. "My name is Alessio Salvatore," he said quietly, "and I need your help with something very important, Miss Chen. Something that could save that little boy's life." Sofia's heart hammered against her ribs as she stared at the man across from her. Alessio Salvatore. The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said it, like it should mean something, like it carried weight, sent chills down her spine. "I need to get back to work," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Sit down, Miss Chen." It wasn't a request. One of the large men shifted slightly, blocking her exit more completely. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes to hear what I have to say, and then you can decide what you want to do." Sofia glanced toward the kitchen, where Sal was watching with concern. If she screamed, if she made a scene, what would these men do? Would they hurt Sal? Would they hurt the other customers? And more importantly, what did they want with Angelo? She slid into the booth, her body tense, ready to run if she got the chance. 5 minutes. Alessio studied her for a moment, and Sofia had the uncomfortable feeling he was assessing her, reading her, calculating how to handle her. "The boy you've been feeding," he began, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "His real name is Luca Salvatore. He's 6 years old, and he's my son." Sofia's breath caught. "Your son? But he's been living on the streets for 2 months." "I know." Something flickered in Alessio's dark eyes. Pain, maybe, or rage carefully contained. "Before that, he was missing for 26 days. He was kidnapped from his school by people who wanted to hurt me." "Kidnapped," Sofia whispered. Oh God. That explained so much. The fear, the trauma, the way Luca, flinched at sudden sounds. "I've been searching for him since the day he was taken," Alessio continued. "And when I finally found him 2 months ago, he didn't recognize me. He ran from me. He's been so traumatized by whatever happened to him that he doesn't remember his own father." Sofia's mind raced. "But if you found him 2 months ago, why haven't you? Because forcing him would break him." Alessio's jaw tightened. "I tried. That first day I tried to bring him home. He fought so hard he hurt himself. A child psychologist told me that forcing him before he was ready would cause permanent damage, that I needed to let him feel safe first. Rebuild trust slowly." "So you've been watching him," Sofia said, understanding dawning. "This whole time, you've been watching. Every single night. Making sure he's safe. Making sure no one hurts him." Alessio leaned forward slightly. "And watching you take care of him when I couldn't." The weight of his gaze was almost physical. Sofia couldn't look away from those dark eyes. "I don't understand," she said. "If he's your son, if you've been watching all this time, why are you telling me this now? What do you want from me?" "I want you to help me get my son back." Sofia blinked. "How?" "I've tried everything I can think of. He won't let anyone get close except to take food. He won't talk. He runs from anyone who tries to approach him properly. He doesn't run from you. That's different. I just bring him food. I don't try to—" "He trusts you," Alessio interrupted. His voice had an edge now, something desperate beneath the control. In 2 months, you're the only person he's shown any trust toward. You're the only one who can reach him. Sofia shook her head slowly. Mr. Salvatore, I'm not a child psychologist. I'm not qualified to. I don't need you to be qualified. I need you to be what you already are. Alessio's hand moved across the table, not quite touching hers but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. I need you to be the person he trusts, the person who can talk to him, calm him, help him understand that it's safe to come home. And you think he'll just, what? Let me take him to you? No. Alessio pulled back slightly. I think it will take time. I think we'll need to build up to it carefully. Let him see you and me together. Let him understand that you trust me, so maybe he can trust me too. Sofia's mind spun with the implications. You want me to… what, exactly? Spend time with you and him? Introduce you gradually? Yes. For how long? However long it takes. Alessio's eyes never left hers. Weeks. Months. However long my son needs to feel safe enough to come home. I can't, Sofia said immediately. I work 2 jobs. I barely have time to bring him food as it is. I can't just… I'll pay you. Alessio's voice was matter of fact. Whatever you're making at both jobs combined, I'll triple it. You'll work for me, helping me get my son back. That's your only responsibility. Sofia's breath caught. Triple her salary? That was more money than she'd ever dreamed of making. That was rent. Paid on time. Food without worrying. Maybe even savings. But nothing in life was free. Especially not from men who showed up at diners with bodyguards and knew details about your life they shouldn't know. Who are you really? Sofia asked quietly. And don't tell me you're just a concerned father. Concerned fathers don't have men like this. She gestured to the 2 silent guards, following them around. Concerned fathers don't know every detail of a stranger's life. Concerned fathers don't offer to triple someone's salary like it's pocket change. Alessio was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was the smile of a predator. I'm a businessman, Miss Chen. I own various enterprises throughout Chicago. Some legitimate, some less so. He tilted his head slightly. I'm the kind of man who has enemies. The kind of man whose son becomes a target because of who his father is. The kind of man who can offer you more money than you've ever seen, because money is the least valuable thing I possess. A businessman with enemies. Enterprises, both legitimate and not. Sofia wasn't naive. She knew what that meant. You're involved in organized crime, she said flatly. I prefer to think of it as running a diversified business portfolio with unconventional methods. His smile widened slightly. But yes, if you want to be blunt about it. Sofia should leave, should run from this table and never look back. Men like Alessio Salvatore were dangerous. They pulled people into their world and destroyed them. But then she thought about Luca, about the little boy who'd been kidnapped and traumatized, who was sleeping in doorways because he was too scared to trust his own father, who needed help desperately. If I say no, she asked, then I'll find another way. Alessio's voice hardened slightly. But it will take longer. And every day my son spends on the streets is another day he's in danger. Another day he's cold and scared and alone. So I hope you don't say no, Miss Chen. There was a threat buried in those words. Not explicit, but there. Sofia heard it clearly. And if I say yes? What exactly would I be agreeing to? To spend time with Luca and me, to help him feel safe around me, to be the bridge between a father and his son. Alessio pulled a card from his pocket and slid it across the table. To quit both your jobs today and come work exclusively for me until Luca is home. Sofia picked up the card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. Just a name and a phone number. I need to think about it, she said. You have until tonight. Alessio stood, and his men immediately flanked him. Bring Luca his dinner as usual. I'll be waiting nearby. If you agree to help, bring the card with you and I'll approach. If you don't, he paused. Then I'll respect your decision. But I'll also find another way, and you'll never see either of us again. He turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Miss Chen? The food and supplies you've been buying for my son? I've been reimbursing Sal for them. You'll find an extra $300 in your next paycheck. Consider it a thank you for keeping Luca alive when I couldn't. Then he was gone, the bell over the door chiming as the three men disappeared into the morning light. Sofia sat frozen in the booth, the business card burning in her hand. Sal appeared a moment later, sliding into the seat Alessio had vacated. You okay, girl? I don't know, Sofia said honestly. Sal, those men. I know who they were. Sal's voice was grim. Alessio Salvatore runs half the criminal operations in Chicago. Dangerous man, Sofia. Very dangerous. He says the boy I've been feeding is his son. Sal's eyes widened. Jesus. That explains why… He stopped himself. Why what? Why I've been getting visits from men in suits every few days, asking if I've seen anyone bothering you. Why there's been an SUV parked across from your apartment building for the past 2 months. Sal shook his head. He's been protecting you, making sure you're safe while you take care of his kid. Sofia's stomach dropped. He's been watching my apartment? Protection detail probably, making sure his son's only friend doesn't get hurt. Sal studied her face. What did he want? He wants me to help him get his son back. To work for him. Sofia set down the card. He offered to triple my salary. Sal whistled low. That's a lot of money. It's also a lot of danger. Men like him. Sal, I can't get involved with organized crime. I can't… But the boy needs help, Sal said quietly. And from what you've told me, you're the only person he trusts. That doesn't mean I should… Sofia, I'm going to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. Sal's voice was serious now. Men like Alessio Salvatore don't ask for help. They take what they want. The fact that he came here, that he offered to pay you, that he's giving you a choice at all, that means he's trying to do this the right way. For his son's sake. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you say no, he'll find another way. Maybe not a way you like. Maybe not a way that keeps you safe. Sal reached across and squeezed her hand. But if you say yes, if you help him, you'll be under his protection. And there's no safer place in Chicago than under the protection of a man like that. Sofia thought about Luca's haunted eyes, about the way he flinched at loud noises, about how he'd looked at her last night with something almost like hope. I need to think, she said again. Then think fast, Sal replied, because men like Alessio Salvatore don't wait long for answers. Sofia went through the rest of her shift in a daze. Her hands moved on autopilot, pouring coffee, taking orders, delivering plates, while her mind spun with impossible choices. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this. 1. On one hand, a traumatized child who needed help. A father who was clearly desperate to get his son back. An offer of financial security she'd never dreamed of. On the other hand, a dangerous criminal. A world of violence and secrets. The very real possibility that getting involved would destroy her life. But then, what life did she have to protect? She worked herself to exhaustion for barely enough money to survive. She had no family, no real friends except Sal and Jenny. She lived in a studio apartment that leaked when it rained and had a landlord who'd raised her rent 3 times in 2 years. And more than that, she'd already gotten involved. The moment she'd started feeding Luca, The moment she'd spent money she couldn't afford on blankets and socks for him, she'd made a choice. Maybe it was time to commit to that choice fully. By the time her shift ended at 3 p.m., Sofia had made her decision. She went home, showered, changed into clean clothes. Then she packed a bag. Just basics. Things she might need if she had to stay somewhere else for a while. She wasn't sure why she did it. Just instinct. At 7 p.m., she stopped by the community kitchen and loaded up on food for Luca. Chicken and rice tonight. Still warm. Fresh bread. Fruit. And a new winter hat she'd bought from the dollar store. The card was in her pocket. She walked to Wentworth Street with her heart pounding, half expecting Alessio to appear from the shadows. But the street looked normal. Just the usual evening activity, people heading home from work, a few shops still open. Luca was in his doorway, curled up against the cold. When he saw Sofia approach, his eyes brightened just slightly. That tiny spark of recognition made Sofia's decision feel right. "Hey, Angelo," she said softly, crouching down with the food. "I brought you something good tonight." She went through their usual routine, setting down the food, stepping back, letting him feel safe. But tonight her hand trembled slightly as she set down the container. Luca noticed. His dark eyes found hers, questioning. "I'm okay," Sofia said gently. "Just, I need to tell you something, sweetheart. Someone wants to meet you. Someone who cares about you very much." Luca's eyes widened with fear. He started to pull back. "No. No, don't be scared," Sofia said quickly. "He's not going to hurt you. He's not going to take you anywhere you don't want to go. He just wants to see you. Make sure you're okay." Slowly, Sofia pulled the business card from her pocket and set it on the ground between them. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Sofia heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see Alessio approaching slowly, his hands visible and empty. He'd come alone. No guards, no backup, just a father walking toward his son. "Luca," Alessio said, and his voice cracked on the name. "Luca, it's me. It's Papa." Luca's entire body went rigid. His eyes darted between Sofia and Alessio, panic rising in his face. "It's okay," Sofia said quickly, keeping her voice calm. "Angelo, Luca, it's okay. He's safe. I promise he's safe." "I'm not going to touch you," Alessio said, stopping about 10 feet away. "I'm just going to sit down over here, okay? Just like Sofia does. I'm just going to sit and make sure you're okay." He lowered himself to the cold concrete slowly, deliberately, keeping his distance. When he was seated, he looked at Sofia with an expression of such raw hope it made her chest ache. "Thank you," he mouthed. Sofia nodded slightly, then turned back to Luca. "See? He's just sitting. Just like I do. He brought you something too." Alessio reached into his coat, moving slowly so Luca could see, and pulled out a small stuffed animal. A lion, well-worn and clearly old. "This was yours," Alessio said softly. "Your favorite. You used to take him everywhere. You called him Leo." He set the lion down carefully, within Luca's reach. "I've been keeping him safe for you, waiting to give him back." Luca stared at the stuffed lion. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, his hand reached out. Not for the food Sofia had brought, but for the lion. His small fingers touched the worn fur, and something shifted in his expression. Confusion, recognition, fear, and longing all tangled together. "Leo," he whispered. The first word Sofia had ever heard him speak. His voice was hoarse from disuse, barely audible. But it was there. Alessio's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, baby. That's Leo. Your Leo." Luca picked up the stuffed animal and held it close to his chest. His eyes moved to Alessio's face, really looking at him for the first time. Sofia could almost see the gears turning in his small mind, memories fighting through trauma. "Papa?" The word was so quiet, so uncertain, that Sofia almost didn't hear it. But Alessio did. His breath hitched, and a single tear rolled down his cheek. "Yes," he said, his voice breaking. "Yes, Luca, I'm Papa. I'm here. I've been looking for you every single day, and now I've found you." Luca's face crumpled. He started to cry. Silent tears at first, then soft sobs that shook his small frame. But he didn't run. He sat there, clutching the stuffed lion, crying for everything that had been taken from him. Sofia felt her own tears fall. This was it. This was the moment that boy became his father's son again. "Can I come closer?" Alessio asked gently. "Just a little bit?" Luca hesitated, then nodded. A tiny movement, but unmistakable. Alessio moved forward slowly, closing the distance between them inch by careful inch. When he was close enough, he held out his hand, not reaching for Luca, just offering. Luca stared at that outstretched hand for what felt like an eternity. Then, still clutching Leo with one arm, he reached out with his other hand and placed it in his father's palm. Alessio closed his fingers gently around his son's hand and closed his eyes, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I've got you," he whispered. "Papa's got you. You're safe now. You're safe." Sofia watched them, these two broken people finding each other again, and she knew she'd made the right choice. Whatever happened next, whatever danger came from getting involved with Alessio Salvatore's world, this moment made it worth it. She'd helped reunite a father and son. She'd given a traumatized child back his family. That had to count for something. After several minutes, Alessio looked up at her with red-rimmed eyes. "Thank you," he said again, and this time his voice was steady despite the tears. "Sofia, thank you." "He needs to eat," Sofia said softly, gesturing to the food she'd brought. "And he needs somewhere warm to sleep. But you should go slowly. Don't push him too fast." "I know." Alessio looked back at his son, who was still holding his hand with a death grip. "Luca, are you hungry? Sofia brought you food. Will you eat?" Luca nodded hesitantly. "Okay. Let's eat together, okay? You and me and Sofia. Just like a family." The three of them sat there on the cold street, eating Sofia's carefully prepared dinner under the streetlights. Luca stayed close to Sofia, but he kept his hand in Alessio's, like he was afraid his father might disappear if he let go. It wasn't a perfect reunion. Luca was still scared, still traumatized. But it was a beginning, and sometimes a beginning was enough. 2 hours later, Sofia sat in the back of Alessio's SUV, Luca asleep between them with his head on her lap and his hand still clutching his father's. They were driving to Alessio's estate, a massive property outside the city that had more security than the White House, according to Marco, who'd appeared with the vehicle once Luca had agreed to leave the doorway. "He trusts you completely," Alessio said quietly, his eyes on his sleeping son. "I've never seen him calm like this." "He's exhausted," Sofia replied, running her fingers gently through Luca's matted curls. "He probably hasn't slept properly in months." "Neither have I." Alessio's hand moved to cover hers where it rested on Luca's head. The touch was gentle, grateful. "Sofia, what you did tonight, I can never repay you for that." "You don't have to repay me. I just wanted to help him." "But you did more than help him. You gave him back to me." Alessio's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, a gesture that felt far more intimate than it should. "And now I need you to help me keep him. He's going to wake up tomorrow in a strange place, probably scared. He's going to need you there to tell him it's safe." Sofia had already figured that part out. "That's why I packed a bag. I can stay for a few days, help him transition." "Not a few days." Alessio's eyes met hers in the darkness of the car. "I need you to stay permanently, live at the estate, be there for Luca whenever he needs you. Be the stable presence in his life, while I work to undo the damage that was done to him. Permanently. But I've already sent someone to collect your belongings from your apartment. Your rent is paid through the end of the year, so you can keep it if you want a place to go back to. But Sofia, his hand tightened on hers. I need you. Luca needs you. Please don't leave us. Sofia should be angry that he'd taken such liberties, that he'd assumed she'd agree. But looking at Luca's peaceful sleeping face, at the way he held on to both of them like lifelines, she couldn't find it in herself to protest. Okay, she said quietly. I'll stay. Thank you. Alessio lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, a gesture so old-fashioned and gentle that it stole her breath. Thank you, Sofia. You've given me back my son. I won't forget that. The SUV pulled through massive iron gates and up a long driveway to a house that was more mansion than home. Lights blazed from every window, and Sofia could see security personnel stationed at various points around the property. This was Alessio's world. Power and wealth and danger all wrapped together. And Sofia had just agreed to step into it completely. As Marco opened the car door and Alessio carefully lifted his sleeping son into his arms, Luca stirred and immediately reached for Sofia with a small sound of distress. I'm here, Sofia said quickly, moving to Alessio's side. I'm right here, sweetheart. We're all together. Luca settled, his head on his father's shoulder but his hand gripping Sofia's shirt. They walked into the mansion together. A father, his found son, and the woman who'd become the bridge between them. The woman who'd just bound herself to both of them in ways she couldn't yet understand. The woman whose life had just changed forever. Behind them, Marco closed the door and activated the security system. Inside, in the warm, safe space of the entrance hall, Alessio looked at Sofia over his son's head. His eyes held gratitude, relief, and something else. Something possessive and intense that made Sofia's pulse quicken. Welcome home, he said softly. And Sofia realized with a start that he meant it literally. This was her home now. She'd agreed to stay, to help, to be part of Luca's healing. She'd agreed to be part of Alessio Salvatore's life. She'd just stepped into the world of the Mafia, and there was no going back. But as Luca sighed contentedly in his father's arms, still holding on to her, Sofia thought maybe, just maybe, it would be worth it. Sofia woke to unfamiliar luxury. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was. The bed was too soft, the sheets too smooth, the room too large. Then memory crashed back. Alessio, Luca, the mansion. She sat up quickly, her heart racing. What time was it? Where was Luca? Was he okay? The clock on the nightstand read 6:43 a.m. Sofia threw back the covers. Silk, she realized with a start, and hurried to the door. She was still wearing the clothes from yesterday. No one had shown her where anything was, and she'd been too exhausted last night to ask. The hallway outside her room was wide and elegant, with artwork that probably cost more than Sofia had made in her entire life. She had no idea which direction to go. Then she heard it. A child's scream, raw and terrified. Sofia ran toward the sound, her bare feet slapping against marble floors. She burst through a door and found herself in a bedroom 3 times the size of her entire apartment. Luca was in the center of a massive bed, tangled in expensive sheets, screaming without words. His face was red, his body rigid with terror. And beside the bed, looking absolutely destroyed, was Alessio. Luca, please, Alessio was saying, his voice breaking. Please, baby, it's Papa. You're safe. You're home. But Luca didn't seem to hear him. His eyes were open but unseeing, locked in whatever nightmare had followed him from sleep. Sofia moved without thinking. She climbed onto the bed and gathered Luca into her arms, holding him close. Shh, sweetheart, she murmured, rocking him gently. Shh, Angelo, I'm here. You're safe. I've got you. Luca's screams turned to sobs. His small body shook against hers, but slowly. So slowly, the terror began to ease. His breathing evened out. His grip on her shirt loosened from desperate to merely tight. That's it, Sofia whispered, running her hand through his hair. That's it, baby. You're okay. Nobody's going to hurt you, I promise. It took 10 minutes for Luca to fully calm down. When he finally pulled back to look at Sofia's face, his eyes were red and swollen, but present. Aware. Bad dream? Sofia asked gently. Luca nodded, then buried his face against her shoulder again. Sofia looked up to find Alessio standing beside the bed, his face a mask of helpless pain. He was wearing pajama pants and nothing else, and Sofia could see the tension in every line of his body. How long has he been like this? She asked quietly. 20 minutes. He woke up screaming and Alessio's voice cracked. I tried everything, but he wouldn't let me touch him. He kept screaming, and I couldn't help him. Sofia's heart ached for both of them. He was disoriented. He probably didn't remember where he was or why. The nightmares are normal after trauma. How do you know that? Sofia hesitated. When my parents died, I had nightmares for months. Someone told me it was normal, that it would get better with time and safety. Alessio sat on the edge of the bed, careful to keep some distance from Luca. Did it get better? Eventually. But I had to feel safe first. Really safe. Not just physically, but emotionally. She looked down at Luca, who was listening to their conversation even though his face was still hidden. Luca needs to know he's safe here, that nobody's going to hurt him, that he's allowed to be scared and it's okay. He is safe, Alessio said firmly. This house has more security than the Pentagon. Nothing can hurt him here. Physical safety isn't the same as emotional safety. Sofia adjusted her hold on Luca, making sure he could hear her clearly. He needs to know that he's allowed to be afraid, that he's allowed to have nightmares, that nobody's going to be angry at him for being traumatized. Alessio was quiet for a long moment. Then softly, Luca, Papa's not angry. I promise. You can be as scared as you need to be. I just want you to know I'm here. Luca shifted slightly, peeking out at his father from the safety of Sofia's arms. I love you, Alessio continued, his voice thick with emotion. More than anything in this world. And I'm going to keep you safe. But I'm also going to be patient. We'll go as slow as you need, okay? Luca stared at his father for a long moment. Then, in that hoarse little voice Sofia had only heard once before, he whispered, Papa? Yes, baby, I'm here. Don't leave. Alessio's face crumpled. Never. I'm never leaving you again. I promise. Luca nodded slowly, then looked up at Sofia. You stay too? I'll stay as long as you need me, Sofia assured him. I'm not going anywhere. Something in Luca's expression eased. Not completely. There was still fear there, still trauma, but also a tiny spark of hope. Hungry, he said simply. Sofia smiled. Then let's get you some breakfast. What do you like to eat? Luca thought about it seriously. Pancakes. Papa makes good pancakes. Alessio looked stunned. You remember that? You remember me making pancakes? Sometimes. Luca's voice was still quiet, uncertain. When I try hard to remember, there's pancakes. And songs. You sang songs. Italian songs, Alessio confirmed, his voice breaking. You're Nonna's favorites. Do you want me to make you pancakes now? And maybe sing while I cook? Luca considered this, then nodded. Sofia comes too. Of course, Sofia said immediately. We'll all go together. The kitchen was enormous and professional grade, clearly designed by someone who took cooking seriously. Alessio moved through it with practiced ease, pulling out ingredients while Luca sat at the kitchen island with Sofia beside him. Luca hadn't let go of her hand. Not once. And he watched his father with those huge, dark eyes, taking in every movement like he was trying to reconcile memory with reality. "Your nonna used to make pancakes every Sunday," Alessio said as he measured flour. "She'd let you help mix the batter. You'd get it everywhere. In your hair, on your clothes, all over the counter. And she'd laugh and say you were creating art, not cooking." "Nonna," Luca repeated softly. "I remember. White hair. And she smelled like flowers." "Lavender," Alessio confirmed, his voice gentle. She loved lavender. Her garden was full of it. He started mixing the batter, then began to sing. Softly at first, then stronger as he gained confidence. It was a beautiful song, something Italian and melodic. Sofia didn't understand the words, but she could hear the emotion in them. Love and loss and hope all tangled together. Luca's grip on Sofia's hand loosened slightly. He leaned forward, drawn by the music. "I know that song," he whispered. "You used to ask me to sing it every night before bed," Alessio said, pouring batter onto the griddle. "Sometimes you'd sing along, even though you got half the words wrong. Can you teach me again? The words?" Alessio turned from the stove, and Sofia could see tears in his eyes. "I'll teach you anything you want to learn, baby. Anything at all." They had breakfast together, pancakes that were perfect, light and fluffy with just the right amount of sweetness. Luca ate slowly, still watching his father warily, but no longer terrified. Just cautious. Sofia found herself watching Alessio too. This wasn't the dangerous man from the diner yesterday. This was a father desperately trying to connect with his traumatized son. A man who sang Italian songs while cooking and remembered his mother's lavender garden. It made him human, real, and far more complicated than Sofia had expected. After breakfast, Alessio showed them around the house. It was massive. 12 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, multiple living areas, a library, a gym, an indoor pool, and even a movie theater. The kind of wealth Sofia couldn't even conceptualize. "This is all yours?" she asked as they walked through the library. "Mine and Luca's." Alessio looked at his son, who was examining books with careful fingers. "I built this place for him. After his mother died, I wanted to give him stability, a home that would always be safe." "It's beautiful," Sofia said honestly. "It's empty." Alessio's voice was quiet. "Has been for 68 days. I couldn't stand being here without him. I slept in the SUV most nights, just to be close to where he was." Sofia looked at him sharply. "You slept in your car for 2 months?" "I couldn't leave him. Even from a distance, I needed to know he was okay." Alessio's eyes found hers. "And I needed to know you were okay too, that no one was threatening you or hurting you for helping him." "That's why there were always men around," Sofia realized. "I thought I was imagining things, but they were yours, watching me." "Protecting you," Alessio corrected. "You became important to my son, which made you important to me. I wasn't going to let anyone hurt you." There was something intense in his gaze, something that made Sofia's pulse quicken. She looked away quickly. "Papa," Luca called from across the room. "What's this?" He was holding a photograph in an ornate frame. Alessio crossed to him quickly, and Sofia followed. The photo showed a younger Alessio with a beautiful woman. She had dark hair and a warm smile, and she was holding a baby with the same dark curls as Luca. "That's your mama," Alessio said softly. "Her name was Isabella. You were 6 months old in this picture." Luca stared at the photo. "I don't remember her." "I know, baby. You were very young when she got sick." Alessio knelt beside his son. "But she loved you so much. Every single day, She'd hold you and sing to you and tell you how much you meant to her. Like you do? Yes, exactly like I do. Alessio touched the frame gently. She made me promise that if anything happened to her, I'd love you enough for both of us. And I have. I do. Luca was quiet for a moment. Then, is she in heaven? Yes. Is that why the bad men took me? Because she couldn't protect me from heaven? Sofia's heart broke. Alessio looked like he'd been stabbed. No, baby, no. Alessio pulled Luca close, and this time, Luca didn't resist. The bad men took you because they wanted to hurt me. It had nothing to do with Mama. Nothing to do with you. You didn't do anything wrong. But I couldn't remember. Luca's voice was muffled against his father's chest. I tried so hard to remember where home was, but everything was scary and wrong and I couldn't think. And then I forgot. I forgot you. That's not your fault, Alessio said fiercely. None of this is your fault. The bad men hurt you and scared you, and that made it hard to remember. But you're home now. You're safe. And we're going to help you remember everything. Luca cried then, really cried, all the fear and confusion pouring out. And Alessio held him, rocking him gently and murmuring in Italian. Sofia stood back, giving them space. This was a moment they needed. Father and son reuniting properly. She was just the bridge. Not family. Not really part of this. But when Luca reached out blindly with one hand, searching for her, Sofia stepped forward without hesitation. She took his hand, and Luca pulled her closer until she was part of the embrace too. You're both here, Luca said, his voice small but less terrified than before. Papa and Sofia, both here. Both here, Sofia confirmed. We're not leaving, Alessio added. Either of us. They stood like that for a long time, 3 people bound together by trauma and hope, and the desperate need to keep one small boy safe. The next 3 weeks fell into a rhythm. Mornings started with nightmares more often than not. Luca would wake up screaming, and Sofia would run to his room, which was now next to hers, to calm him down. Alessio would be there too, hovering nearby, learning slowly what helped and what made things worse. Breakfasts were always together. Alessio cooked, pancakes or eggs or French toast, and they'd eat at the kitchen island. Luca would sit between them, holding both their hands like anchors. Days were spent helping Luca remember. They'd look at photo albums, watch old videos, visit places he'd been before the kidnapping. The private school, from a distance, because getting too close made him panic. The park where he used to play. The ice cream shop that made his favorite flavor. Slowly, piece by piece, Luca's memories returned. Not all of them. The trauma had damaged something, and the child psychologist Alessio had hired said some memories might never come back. But enough returned that Luca started calling Alessio Papa, without hesitation, started smiling occasionally, started being a little boy instead of just a terrified survivor. But he still needed Sofia. Constantly. If she left the room, he'd panic. If she talked about going back to her apartment, he'd cry. She'd become his security blanket, his proof that the world could still have good people in it. And Sofia was falling into this life faster than she'd expected. It helped that Alessio kept his word about everything. He'd paid off her debts, tripled her salary, set up a bank account in her name with more money than she'd ever seen. He'd hired staff to handle the household so Sofia could focus entirely on Luca. He'd been nothing but respectful and grateful. But there was something else too, something growing between them that Sofia tried hard to ignore. The way Alessio looked at her when she was reading to Luca. The way his hand would linger when he passed her something at breakfast. The way he'd sought her opinion on everything from Luca's therapy to household decisions, treating her like a partner rather than an employee. The way her heart would race when he smiled at her. The way she'd catch herself watching him with Luca, seeing the gentle father instead of the dangerous criminal. It was dangerous territory. Sofia knew that. Alessio Salvatore was a mafia boss, a man who'd killed people, who ran criminal enterprises, who lived in a world of violence she didn't understand. But he was also a man who sang Italian songs while making pancakes, who cried when his son had nightmares, who'd spent 2 months sleeping in his car just to be close to Luca, who looked at Sofia like she'd hung the moon because she'd helped save his son. 3 weeks in, everything changed. Sofia was reading to Luca in the library when Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "Boss needs you," he said quietly. "Luca, too. There's a situation." Sofia's stomach dropped. What kind of situation? The kind where everyone needs to be in the safe room, now. Sofia scooped up Luca immediately. "What's happening?" "Someone just breached the outer security perimeter. Multiple hostiles, heavily armed." Marco's hand was on his weapon. "The boss wants you and Luca in the safe room while we handle it." "Who?" Sofia asked, even as she hurried after Marco. "Who's attacking?" "We don't know yet. But they're professionals, and they're here for something specific." They reached a hidden door in Alessio's office. Marco pressed his palm to a scanner, and the wall slid open to reveal a reinforced room filled with monitors, supplies, and enough security to withstand a siege. Alessio was already inside, armed and dangerous-looking in a way Sofia had never seen. When he saw them, relief flooded his face. "Thank God," he said, immediately crossing to take Luca from Sofia's arms. "Get inside, both of you. Don't come out until I give the all clear." "What's happening?" Sofia asked. "Someone found out about Luca. Someone knows he's here." Alessio's jaw was tight. "I don't know who or how, but they're coming for him. And I'm going to make sure they regret it." Fear shot through Sofia. The people who took him before? Possibly. Or someone new? Alessio set Luca down gently, then turned to Sofia. His hands came up to frame her face. "Listen to me. No matter what you hear, no matter what happens, you stay in here. The room is soundproof, so you won't hear the fighting. There's food, water, communications. If something goes wrong, if I don't come back, Marco knows what to do. He'll get you and Luca out safely." "Don't say that," Sofia whispered. "Don't talk like you're not coming back." "I have to face reality." Alessio's thumbs brushed her cheekbones. "Sofia, if something happens to me, I need you to promise me you'll take care of Luca, not just until someone else can, but really take care of him. Be his family." "Alessio, promise me." Sofia's eyes filled with tears. "I promise." Alessio leaned forward and pressed his forehead to hers. "Thank you. For everything. For saving my son. For bringing light back into our lives. For being—" He stopped, his voice breaking. "For being everything." Then he kissed her. It was quick, desperate, and tasted like goodbye. Before Sofia could react, Alessio pulled back and turned to Luca. "Be brave, baby boy," he said, kneeling to hug his son tight. "Papa has to go make sure the bad men don't hurt anyone, but I'll come back. I promise I'll come back." "Don't go," Luca pleaded, clinging to him. "Please don't go, Papa. I have to keep you safe, to keep Sofia safe." Alessio gently disentangled himself. "But you're strong. So strong. And Sofia's going to stay with you. You take care of each other until I get back, okay?" Luca nodded, tears streaming down his face. Alessio stood, looked at Sofia one more time with an expression that held too much. Gratitude, regret, something that might have been love, and then he was gone. The door slid shut behind him with a finality that made Sofia's chest ache. She pulled Luca close as the locks engaged. They were safe, protected, hidden behind walls that could withstand almost anything. But outside those walls, Alessio was going to war. And Sofia had no idea if she'd ever see him again. Luca buried his face against her shoulder. I don't want Papa to die. He won't, Sofia said, trying to sound confident. He's strong and smart, and he has lots of people helping him. He'll be fine. But she didn't know that. Didn't know if Alessio would walk back through that door, or if she'd just had her last conversation with him. Didn't know if the kiss they'd shared was the beginning of something or the end. All she could do was hold Luca and wait. And pray that the man who'd become so important to both of them would survive whatever was coming. Time moved strangely in the safe room. The monitors showed security feeds from around the property, but they were silent. Sofia could see movement, dark figures. Approaching the house, Alessio's security team engaging them, flashes that might have been gunfire, but she couldn't hear anything. The soundproofing worked too well. Luca had cried himself to exhaustion and fallen asleep in her arms. Sofia held him, watching the monitors, trying not to think about what each movement meant. Trying not to imagine Alessio hurt or worse. She'd known him for less than a month, had spent most of that time focused on Luca, on healing a traumatized child. She shouldn't care this much about a man she barely knew, a criminal, a killer. But she did. God help her, she did. Because he wasn't just those things. He was also a father who'd spent 2 months sleeping in his car to be near his son. A man who sang Italian lullabies and made perfect pancakes. A man who looked at Sofia like she was precious. Like she mattered. A man who'd kissed her like she was the last good thing in a dark world. The monitors showed the last of the dark figures going down. Alessio's security team was moving through the property, checking for additional threats. On one screen, Sofia could see Alessio himself. Alive, standing, talking to Marco. Relief flooded through her so intensely she felt dizzy. He was alive. He was okay. 10 minutes later, the locks on the safe room door disengaged. The door slid open and Alessio stepped through. He was covered in blood. Not all of it his, Sofia hoped. And there was a cut above his eyebrow that would need stitches. But he was alive. He was whole. Sofia stood carefully, trying not to wake Luca. Is it over? It's over. Alessio's voice was rough, exhausted. They're all dead or captured. We're secure. Who are they? Kozlov's cousins. They wanted revenge for what I did to Dmitri. Alessio moved closer, his eyes finding Luca. Is he okay? He cried for a while, then fell asleep. He was so scared. He's safe. That's all that matters. Alessio reached out slowly, his bloody hand hovering near Sofia's face like he wanted to touch her, but was afraid to. Are you okay? I'm fine. Just worried about you. Sofia couldn't help herself. She reached up and touched his face, careful of the cut. You're hurt. It's nothing. I've had worse. That doesn't make it nothing. Sofia's eyes filled with tears again. Reaction, probably. Relief that he was alive. You scared me. Both of us. I'm sorry. Alessio caught her hand, pressing it more firmly against his face. I'm so sorry. But I couldn't let them get to you. Either of you. They stood like that, connected by touch, and fear, and relief. Then Luca stirred in Sofia's arms. Papa? His voice was sleepy, confused. I'm here, baby. Alessio took his son carefully, holding him close despite the blood on his clothes. I'm here. Everything's okay. The bad men are gone. Luca wrapped his arms around his father's neck and burst into tears. Not scared tears this time, but relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. I thought you died, Luca sobbed. I thought you left me, again. Never. Alessio's voice broke. I will never leave you, Luca. I promise. I will always fight to come back to you. Always. Sofia watched them, father and son clinging to each other, and felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't just a job anymore. This wasn't just helping a traumatized child. This was family. Chosen, maybe. Unconventional, definitely. But family, nonetheless. And Sofia realized with startling clarity that she didn't want to leave. Not when Luca was healed. Not ever. She wanted to stay in this dangerous, complicated, beautiful life, with this man and this boy who'd somehow become her whole world in less than a month. Alessio looked at her over Luca's head, his dark eyes intense. "We need to talk," he said quietly, "about what happens next, about keeping you both safe." "Okay," Sofia said. "But first—" Alessio shifted Luca slightly, reaching out to pull Sofia closer with his free arm. "First, I need to say thank you. For staying. For being brave. For being here when we needed you." Sofia let herself be pulled into the embrace, careful of Luca between them. "Where else would I be? Anywhere but here. Anywhere safe and normal and not filled with violence." Alessio's hand came up to cup the back of her head. "But I'm so grateful you stayed. So grateful you're part of our lives." "Me too," Sofia whispered. They stood like that, the three of them wrapped together, until Luca's breathing evened out and he fell back asleep, until the blood on Alessio's clothes had dried and the adrenaline had faded, until it was just them, a makeshift family born from trauma and kindness and something that felt remarkably like love. "Come on," Alessio said finally, "let's get cleaned up. And then we'll talk about the future." Sofia nodded, following him out of the safe room, following him deeper into his world, into his life, knowing there was no going back now, knowing she didn't want to. 6 months later, Sofia stood in the kitchen watching Alessio teach Luca how to make his nonna's famous tiramisu. Flour dusted the counter, espresso stained the marble, and Luca was laughing, actually laughing, as he tried to layer the mascarpone properly. "No, no, like this," Alessio demonstrated, his hand guiding his son's. "Gentle. You have to be gentle with it." "Like with Sofia?" Luca asked innocently, and Sofia felt her cheeks flush. Alessio caught her eye across the kitchen, his smile warm and knowing. "Exactly like with Sofia. 6 months. Half a year since that terrifying night when men had come for Luca. Half a year of healing and growing and slowly becoming a family. Luca's nightmares had lessened to maybe once a week. He was in therapy twice a week with a specialist who understood childhood trauma. He'd started smiling more, playing more, being a 7-year-old boy instead of a terrified survivor. And Sofia had stayed. Not as an employee anymore, but as something much more complicated. She and Alessio had danced around it for months. The attraction, the connection, the way they moved together like they'd been doing it for years. Co-parenting Luca, making decisions together, stealing glances across rooms. It had been Luca who finally forced the issue 2 weeks ago. "Why doesn't Sofia sleep in Papa's room?" he'd asked during breakfast, his 7-year-old logic direct and uncomplicated. "You love her. She loves you. That's what people do when they love each other." Alessio had choked on his coffee. Sofia had frozen with her fork halfway to her mouth. "Luca," Alessio had said carefully, "what makes you think—" "I'm not stupid, Papa. You look at her the way you looked at Mama in the pictures. And Sofia looks at you the same way." Luca had taken another bite of pancake, completely unbothered. "So why doesn't she just move to your room? Then she'd be closer when I have nightmares anyway." Out of the mouths of babes. That night, after Luca was asleep, Alessio had found Sofia in the library. He'd sat beside her on the couch, taken her hand, and said simply, "My son's not wrong." "About which part?" Sofia had asked, her heart pounding. "All of it." Alessio had turned to face her fully. "Sofia, I know this world isn't what you planned. I know I'm not what you planned. But these past 6 months, you've become everything to us. To me. And I need to know if there's a chance you feel the same. Sofia had looked at this complicated, dangerous, gentle man, this father who'd fought for his son, this criminal with a code of honor, this person who'd somehow stolen her heart without her realizing it. I'm terrified, she'd admitted, of your world, of the danger, of how much I've come to care. I'm terrified too, Alessio had said, because I've already lost one person I loved. The thought of losing you, his voice had broken. Sofia, I can't promise you safety. My world is dangerous. But I can promise you that I will protect you with everything I have, that I will love you with everything I am, if you'll let me. Sofia had kissed him then, really kissed him, not the desperate goodbye from months ago, but something deeper, a promise, a beginning. They'd taken it slowly after that. Dates within the mansion, since leaving was complicated with Luca's security needs. Movie nights where Luca would fall asleep between them. Stolen kisses in hallways, gradually shifting from separate rooms to shared spaces to finally, last week, moving Sofia's things into Alessio's bedroom. Luca had been thrilled. Finally, he'd said, like they'd been keeping him waiting. Now, watching them cook together, Sofia felt a contentment she'd never expected. This strange, unconventional family they'd built. Sofia, Luca called. Come taste. Tell me if it's good. She crossed to the counter, and Alessio immediately pulled her against his side. His arm around her waist felt natural now. Right. Sofia tasted the tiramisu. It's perfect, sweetheart. Your nonna would be proud. Luca beamed. Can we take some to Marco? He said his birthday is tomorrow. Of course, Alessio said. We'll bring it to him after dinner. And can Sofia come to my soccer game on Saturday? Luca looked between them hopefully. The other kids' moms come. Sofia's kind of like my mom now, right? Sofia's breath caught. Alessio's arm tightened around her. If Sofia wants to be, Alessio said carefully, looking at her. That's her choice, Luca. Luca turned his big dark eyes on Sofia. Do you want to be my mom? Not instead of my real mom, but, you know, the mom who's here now? Tears burned Sofia's eyes. I would love that, she whispered, more than anything. Luca launched himself at her, hugging her tight. Good. Because you're already the best at reading bedtime stories and making me feel better when I'm sad. You're supposed to be my mom. Sofia held him close, meeting Alessio's eyes over Luca's head. She saw love there, gratitude, and something that looked like hope for the future. This wasn't the life she'd planned. She'd gone from working 2 jobs and barely surviving to living in a mansion with a mafia boss and his son. From being invisible to being the center of 2 people's world. It was dangerous, complicated, completely insane, but it was hers. This family, this love, this life. It was hers. And she wouldn't trade it for anything. That night, after Luca was asleep and the tiramisu was cooling in the fridge, Sofia and Alessio stood on the balcony overlooking the grounds. Security lights dotted the property, a reminder that danger was always close. But inside the perimeter, they were safe, together. I have something for you, Alessio said quietly. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Sofia's heart stopped. Alessio. It's not what you think. Not yet. He opened the box to reveal a key on a simple chain. This is a key to the safe room, and to every security system in this house. I'm making you official, not just in Luca's life, but in mine. Full access, full partnership, full trust. Sofia took the key, her hand trembling. In Alessio's world, this meant more than a ring. This was trust. This was making her family in the way that mattered most to him. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. Alessio corrected, pulling her close. For saving my son. For saving me. For choosing us when you could have walked away. I never wanted to walk away. I know. And that's what makes you extraordinary. Alessio kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. I love you, Sofia Chen. I love everything about you. And someday, when the time is right, I'm going to ask you to marry me properly, to make this official in every way. I'll say yes, Sofia said simply. When you ask, I'll say yes. They stood together under the stars, holding each other close. Inside, Luca slept peacefully. No nightmares tonight. Around them, security kept watch, protecting this small sanctuary of love and healing. Sofia had fed a homeless child every day for 2 months, unaware that his father was the most dangerous man in Chicago. Unaware that her small acts of kindness would change her entire life. She'd stepped into Alessio's world expecting danger and darkness. She'd found that, yes. But she'd also found love, family, a purpose she'd never known she needed. She'd found home. And as Alessio held her close, murmuring promises in Italian against her hair, Sofia knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. With her family. With her love. With the boy she'd saved and the man who'd saved her right back. Forever. The garden was filled with lavender. Luca had insisted on planting it everywhere in memory of his nonna. Sofia walked through it in a simple white dress, her hand in Alessio's, while Luca stood beside them holding the rings. It was a small ceremony. Just Marco and a few trusted members of Alessio's inner circle. Just the people who mattered. I never thought I'd have this again, Alessio said, his voice thick with emotion. A family. Someone to love. Someone who loved me back despite everything. Despite nothing, Sofia corrected. I love you because of everything. Because you're a good father. Because you're honorable in your own way. Because you see me and value me and protect what we've built together. I love you because you fed a scared little boy when no one else cared, Alessio said. Because you're brave and kind, and you chose us. You chose this complicated, dangerous, beautiful life. Best choice I ever made, Sofia whispered. They exchanged rings, simple bands that matched the key she still wore around her neck. And when they kissed, Luca cheered and Marco wiped his eyes, and Sofia felt complete in a way she'd never experienced. This was her life now, her family, her future, Mrs. Sofia Salvatore, mother to Luca, wife to Alessio, part of something bigger and stranger and more wonderful than she'd ever imagined. And as Luca took her hand and Alessio's, pulling them toward the house where a celebration waited, Sofia looked back at the lavender garden one last time. She'd been invisible once, lost and alone and just trying to survive. But kindness had saved her. Love had found her. And family had claimed her. And she would never be invisible again. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.